Be Here Now by a man named Ram Dass. His original name was Richard Alpert.
When I was born, I donned a spacesuit for living on this plane. And everybody comes up and says, what a nice suit. And you're constantly looking into other people's eyes to find out if you're really wearing a nice spacesuit. It's what I call somebody training.
He was a doctor and a Harvard professor. I think he said he had a boat. He was someone who sort of achieved the trappings of regular life and then decided to live a more spiritual life and completely changed his identity to Ram Dass and became probably, arguably, the most popular spiritual teacher living until he passed away. Richard Alpert, Ram Dass, is also the person who synthesized psilocybin mushrooms and LSD for the first time with the help of Timothy Leary.
I knew he was an outlaw.
I think I've lived one of the most interesting lives of anyone in the 20th century.
So Tim Leary, a lot of people know, tune in, drop out, something to tune out, drop out, get high. Psychedelics should be in everyone's hands. We should throw them out there, lead to a big psychic revolution. And obviously that aspect of the psychedelic movement got kind of controversial when the drug war started.
They blew open this psychedelic world. It ended the 1950s.
Leary and Albert will be remembered as cultural icons, very influential people in not only American culture but world culture.
They are iconic figures who stepped off the map.
But Richard Alpert, aka Ram Dass, went another direction and focused on the spiritual underpinnings of what he experienced on psychedelics. So if you've taken mushrooms or LSD, what you notice is a deep presence with the world around you, as though you're seeing it for the first time. And so Richard Alpert, imagine being the first person to go down to Mexico, find these ritualistic mushrooms that tribes are taking, and say, I'm going to introduce this to the entire United States and the rest of the world. So he took psilocybin mushrooms on March 6th, and all of a sudden, the world opens up. Your eyes aren't tight and closed in. They're beginning to open like an aperture. What you discover is what you knew as a child, which is the world is so abundant, and money, status, where you're from, who you know, all of that is trivial compared to just the magnitude of being. Because if you learn that early in life, you avoid the trap that everyone falls into nowadays, which is anxiety. To be able to come out to these trees and really feel full. And everyone is capable of that.
You don't say that tree is good and that tree is bad because one tree is fat and one is thin, or one is tall and one is short, or one is bent and one is straight, unless you're in the lumber business. Practice seeing people as trees.
Even someone as neurotic and anxious as Dr. Richard Alpert, who confesses, I had this like high-achieving Jewish background. You've got to go to Harvard and be a professor and be an intellectual. And so letting go of anxiety, his mother's expectations of him, I would say he was a tough case. But look what he became.
What Ram Dass did for our culture was to open up a door of spirituality by having surrendered so completely to love.
And for those who don't know, this book, Be Here Now, is like the Psychedelic Bible. Anybody who's ever taken mushrooms or LSD, this book will just be sitting somewhere in the guy's apartment who had them. Because you open it up, and yes, I'm giving you the background, but then the book begins to transform into iconography, beautiful drawings, very strange typeface. Look at what a good job he's doing just saying, enter this fun, silly, playful, spontaneous, whimsical world of the spiritual. And even if you don't believe in God, you can call it whatever you want. Oh, there's a funny story in here. I mentioned his guru that he found in India, and he wanted to see how acid would affect his guru because he'd been doing these trials with students in the States. And he gave his guru a bunch of acid, and the guru, I think, took like the most heroic dose ever and didn't change his behavior whatsoever. So for Ram Dass, that was interesting. He said, the psychedelic isn't actually creating a hallucination. It seems to just be giving you what the guru already knows. The lessons are the drugs. The ideas are the drugs.
You appreciate them the way they are. They are what they are, and you can appreciate them. But the minute you get near humans, it's interesting that you immediately go into a judging mode.
Ram Dass and Timothy Leary and all these people were all very irresponsible for promoting LSD. And that, that is the criticism that, especially Tim Leary. Everybody I interviewed when I did this documentary on mushrooms, which is also on the channel, for free, everybody I interviewed had mixed opinions about Tim because he was, like I said, kind of a rock star.
The Harvard Psilocybin Project was one of the biggest and most famous, and they were started to see great results from people. And then people started to do too much.
I think a lot of us, when you understand what mushrooms and LSD are capable of, there is sort of a feeling of like, wow, what if all the world leaders just took mushrooms and acid in a forest somewhere? Maybe they would think differently. And Tim Leary embodied that, and I understand some people thinking it was irresponsible. Would it be better if it were not introduced to the world and nobody had these mind-expanding insights? Steve Jobs never came up with the Apple iPhone.
One of the questions I asked everyone in the series was, are you a hippie or a nerd?
I'm clearly a hippie. And all the people I work with were clearly in that category too. There's something more going on. There's another side of the coin that we don't talk about much. When everything's not ordered and perfect, when there's kind of a gap, you experience this inrush of something. And a lot of people have set off throughout history to find out what that was.
That would suck in a way. But on the other hand, you wouldn't have people who are abusing it. So would psychedelics be inherently spiritual without the spiritual implications? They certainly believe this place that you go on psychedelics is real. It's another plane of experience that our brain is creating all the time, but that we ignore. And one of the interesting things about psychedelics, specifically mushrooms, is they don't enhance brain activity. They're not turning it up like cocaine would, for example. They're diminishing activity in the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for the default mode network. And the default mode network is like Windows for your computer. You don't need all this information. You need to know where your Microsoft Word is and your trash can. It erases all the other ones and zeros that go into it. When you look up at the clouds on mushrooms and you see these shapes and designs, you might think about life and death in terms of a larger, broader picture. And the feeling is that those thoughts are true. Something that's going on that my brain has decided that's not relevant for my survival. Yep, Leary pushed the boundaries. I agree. And I'll end with this, to your question. What is the best way to get rid of stress and negativity? I believe you got to start with this Ram Dass stuff. Let go of everything just long enough. And you say, I'm going to the park like this, and just like a child, sit in the park. Nothing to do. And maybe you have a few options. Maybe you got a book, a journal, some drinks, and then just remember what it was like to be a child, to watch those clouds pass over and to think this day is endless. You don't have to fix it all. That's a powerful idea, and that's what this book is about. So maybe check this book out, or Eckhart Tolle was what did it for me, and go give yourself that time. Because think, you got 365 days. You can spend 2 in a park.